last year. Shoot on my shot, boy, I'm long range. Me and the team on the same thing. Stayed down, never switched up. Only thing changed was the game. I'm in the zone now. Nothing can change what we on now. When I pull up, know it's going down. Foot on the gas, ain't no slowing down. Aiming for greatness, no settling. Kick down the doors, they won't let me in. Taking no L's, yeah, I gotta win. Watch me kick down the doors, they won't let me in. Who running the game now? Foot on the gas, can slow down. No, my team, we holding it down. We know we running it now. Watch the game change. Watch the game change. Watch the game change. Watch the game change, yeah. Watch the game change. Watch the game change. Watch the game change. Watch the game change. I do not gamble, but bet on me. Tell them that's like, yeah, it's LIV. I'm taking a shot for my enemies. I can't waste no more time on my energy. I know they know I got it on lock. Go against me, that's a long shot. Cause I'm counting wins all around the clock. Never doubt me, boy, I don't stop. Who do you feel when they make you the monster? I am not scared of none of you imposters. Taking the lead now while they watching. Think you should leave now while the option. Taking no L's, yeah, I gotta win. Watch me kick down the doors, they won't let me in. I'm running the game now. Foot on the gas, can slow down, no.
Welcome to another edition of the It's Cavalier podcast. It's your boy Mac, and today we finally have something worth relevancy to talk about, right? The Cavaliers actually signed a free agent, though it's somebody that we're very familiar with, and that is Tristan Thompson, as the title of the podcast suggests. Now, Tristan Thompson, I mean, people could feel whatever way without, however they want about him. They can bring up the Kardashians. They can bring up the 25-game suspension. They could talk about how impactful of a player that he was on the 2015-16 championship contender Cavs. There are just so many different things that you could say about Tristan Thompson, but I just have to admit, I'm glad that they finally addressed the backup 4-5 position. I know this is really more so of a 5 with Tristan, but they had to do something, right? They had not very many rostered players, and they have to still figure out this Okoro situation, which with the stretching of Ricky Rubio's contract over the next couple of seasons, that should definitely help take a step in the right direction with that. But addressing the backup center position, that definitely helps. Now, with Cleveland just last season in 49 games, Tristan averaged 3.3 points, 3.6 rebounds and assists, and shot 60.8% from the field. Now, the question I think that a lot of people have is, well, just how much of that was due to the performance enhancing drugs, right? The reason that he was suspended for 25 games, the PEDs, just how much of that early season resurgence was from the PEDs? How much can we trust Tristan Thompson? I think it's fair to say that we can rely upon him in spot minutes, right? I would not count on Tristan being an everyday rotation player. I think that we have failed if that has ended up being the case. But at the end of the day, why not bring back a man who can give you spot minutes here and there at the backup 5, somebody that you like having in your locker room, can be a positive presence for the very, very young Cavaliers. But at the end of the day, we, as HJ17 Gaming suggests down here, we need Okoro news. I'm trying to be patient in regards to this core situation. I do feel like the stretch provision used on Ricky Rubio's contract, like I said, I think that is a step in the right direction. Now the Cavaliers can offer him a first-year salary within the $8 million, I think up to maybe $8.5 million for that first-year salary without jumping into the luxury tax territory, but I could be wrong in regards to that. But I do know that the additional funds that they freed up for, by stretching out Rubio's contract, they ended up able to get an additional $849,343 more in cap flexibility for this season, which should definitely help, depending upon whatever direction they go in. Now, this to me would seem to suggest that they are going to end up re-signing him to some type of multi-year extension, but I guess you never really know. Kobe Altman is just so damn, he plays everything so close to the vest, and you just never know what's really going on with this franchise. But, with the signing of Thompson, the Cavaliers have addressed that backup center position, and now they can focus solely, hopefully, on getting Okoro either under contract or moved via sign and trade. Now, I continue to feel like the former is probably the more likely in regards to that, but time will tell. I still believe that there's a lot of value in Isaac Okoro. I still feel like the defensive caliber, the elite, and that is the word I will use. I think that his perimeter defense is elite, even though people do not recognize it as such. I still think that that still holds a place on this team. And I think that his 3-point shot, despite what happened in back-to-back postseasons, I still do think it has improved since he came into the league. The problem with Isaac is that he has failed to capitalize in back-to-back postseasons. He has failed to make teams pay for giving him so much space, and he's done himself no favors. And that's exactly why he is in the position that he is in right now, looking for that new contract. But at the very least, another position has been filled, and I'm hoping that Tristan can look very similar to what he did at the start of last season before he got busted for PDs. But because there was a legitimate stretch where I honestly felt like, hey, this guy should probably be either an everyday rotation player or he should be playing more minutes than he was given. I mean, you just look at some of the early season totals that he was able to give Cleveland. In his first game back, which came on October 28th of 2023 against Indiana, he managed to contribute 4 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, and was pretty impactful in just about 9 minutes of action. That's the type of that is the type of production that you need out of a player like Tristan Thompson. You don't necessarily need him to be an everyday guy. You just need him to give you production and rest for the likes of Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen, who are likely to be the two biggest candidates at center, kind of rotating those minutes. Some coming with the starters, some coming with the reserves, and Tristan kind of filling in wherever he can. I'm not sure how much Tristan has left in the tank, but I suppose looking at the market, looking at the players that are available, you couldn't really do any worse, because let's be honest, this was never really a big offseason for free agency, right? There were not a lot of big names that were actually going to be free this offseason, let alone that the Cavaliers actually had the cap space to attain. So, I mean, take of this signing or make of this signing what you will. But considering who was actually available, it makes a lot of sense to go ahead and bring a guy back who you felt comfortable with, right? You looking at the market here. JaVale McGee, Boban Marjanovic, Omer Yurtseven. I mean, Damian Jones, who signed, I think, in China, right? Moses Brown, Bismack Biyombo. I think Bismack probably would have been my other preferred choice had we not gotten Tristan back. But I say all this to say the options were scarce, man. We're at this point. We're in September now, and we're in September. There were not really any names left of note worth actually campaigning for this team to bring in. So it makes a lot of sense that Tristan is back in the wine and gold. I'm just curious to see how much Kenny Atkinson will actually utilize him. Now we know with JB, not even not even just Tristan's minutes from last season, but all the reserves minutes across the board last season fluctuated because JB, he was very, very stuck in his ways in regards to his utilization of the bench. Very rarely would he go 9, 10 deep unless he was truly forced to, unless injuries came in and made a difference to which you had to rely more upon your reserves. But that's just the way that JB tends to operate. And I'm very curious to see if it'll be the same in Detroit. But we know Kenny Atkinson is very much the antithesis of that, and he prefers to really get as much as he can out of those reserves. So I would not be surprised at all to see Tristan play maybe, 10, 12 minutes a night whenever he's out there. But I would also not be surprised to see him kind of glued to the bench. HJ17 Gaming says this offseason has been underrated for Cleveland. Re-signing Donovan Mitchell and getting a good head coach / staff will do wonders for development and chemistry. I think that if you can get past the Cavaliers not bringing any big names out, uh, big names in rather to the franchise, yeah, you can probably sum this offseason up as underrated in many respects because cleaning house and bringing in an entirely different coaching staff, you just do not know how much that can impact a franchise. You do not know how much that can impact a team. And it's not like the Cavaliers just up and got rid of all the continuity that they have. And I believe continuity is important when you're talking about the roster because all of the core is back. In fact, as HJ17 Gaming says down here, you re-signed Donovan Mitchell when a lot of major news media outlets felt that he was not a lock to come back and that he was pretty much a lock to leave. You got Evan Mobley on the rookie max extension, which is basically a given. That was never not going to happen. And then the unexpected move was adding additional years to Jarrett Allen's contract, which I still believe will end up being very, very valuable because even if he does not pan out under Atkinson the way that we believe that he can, harkening back to their Brooklyn days together, you have added the incentive to another team to inquire and acquire him, right? You have added further incentive for other teams to go out there and get this man who was on a pretty valuable contract and he still has a lot of team control left. So you've re-signed 3 of your core players. You still have Darius Garland under contract. And then a lot of your major reserves are still in town, right? Karis LeVert, who has been constantly in and out of trade rumors since he got back here, uh, is still here. George Niang, despite having a very bad year, could have somewhat of a resurgence under Atkinson. Sam Merrill is surely going to play a bigger role this year. And then really the last major domino to fall when you're talking about like everyday rotation players is Isaac Okoro, who I think most of us believe at this point is probably going to end up back on maybe a multi-year contract, maybe the qualifying offer, God forbid. But yeah, I think you can sum this up as underrated at this point because a lot of people just poo-poo on it now. A lot of people think this has just been a shitty offseason period by Kobe Allman, but I don't necessarily view it that way. I never felt like this was going to be a flashy offseason. I always held the opinion that, hey, go out and bring me somebody, right? Sign somebody because you still have to fill out the roster. You still have to round out the rest of your rotation. But at the end of the day, it's hard for me to be too pissed or too down in the dumps about what they've done because they did get Donovan Mitchell back. They did get a new head coach and they did add some value to Jarrett Allen's contract. And you look at some of the moves on the margins, right? You brought in JT Thor, a player on that 2A that I do believe is going to end up being a NBA rotation caliber player eventually in his career. Where that comes with Cleveland, I don't know, but I do see enough there in his game to suggest that he can play at the next level on a consistent basis, at least more so than he did with Charlotte. I absolutely love the fact that the team finally brought over Luke Travers, a guy you guys, if you've been watching this podcast for any length of time, know that I have been just pining for since the day that they drafted him. He has quickly become a fan favorite, even though he hasn't played a minute on a regular. Well, he hasn't at least played a regular season minute on an NBA court, but I do think that is coming. I like what I see in his game, despite the flaws with the perimeter shot. He just does so many different things on that basketball court to impact winning that I think that they can get past that. And I think that he can eventually become a respectable shooter. And then, you know, the other 2A with Emoni Bates, I think we all knew that that was coming. He was probably never going to be a real threat to be in the rotation this year, but getting him on that 2A, allowing him more runway to develop with the charge and in a small capacity with the Cavaliers makes a ton of sense. I do wish that they could have addressed the backup big position earlier on in the offseason so that we would have had more of a solidified option because earlier on in free agency, there actually were some decent options out there. But again, with the team's mindset kind of being dead set on not getting into luxury tax territory, I understand why they maybe would have waited so long because here we are in September and free agency, at least the start of free agency, was months ago, right? But at the end of the day, it is an understandable thing to not want to throw all your cards out there early on when you still don't know what's going to happen with Isaac. HJ says, I'm still sad they didn't go after B-ball Paul. Yeah, I think Paul Reed would have been a pretty nice option in Cleveland. I think it probably all just boiled down to the financials of it all, because I think we are all assuming that Tristan Thompson has come back on the veteran minimum, which makes a ton of sense for a player like him who is not slated to be an everyday rotation player. And I mean, you consider what Paul Reed is making, the cap hit that he is going to have for next year. That is going to be $7.7 million. I suppose that probably could have happened, but you would have had to shed salary somewhere else. You would have had to move up off of the contract of George Niang or Karis LeVert or some type of other combination of things, because Paul is making more money than the Cavaliers would have felt comfortable with taking in, especially when you consider the Isaac Okoro of it all. So I understand them not doing that. And frankly, I understand not getting a lot of these names, because if the line that they're willing and the hill that they're willing to die on is that luxury tax number or line, then I completely understand it, because as we speak, as of now, well, at least prior to this signing, they were $10.6 million below the luxury tax line and $17.9 million below the first apron. So I understood why that is. Doesn't make it any easier to stomach, as I'm sure most of us feel that we really wish they would have done something a lot earlier in the offseason. But at this point, beggars cannot be choosers. And you look at the roster now with Cleveland, and not much has changed, right? Sans Isaac Okoro, you now have on the roster Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Jarrett Allen, Karis LeVert, Max Strus, Evan Mobley, George Niang, Dean Wade is still around, Jalen Tyson, who I do believe is going to be a day one contributor and may end up making Karis LeVert expendable at some point during this season prior to the trade deadline. Ty Jerome, who is often forgotten about amongst Cavalier fans. I do think he will eventually play a role this year if he is not moved in a salary shedding move. Sam Merrill, as I mentioned earlier, Craig Porter Jr., who came on last season strong in a good, solid rookie performance for him. Emoni Bates, as I mentioned before, Luke Travers, both of those guys on two ways. So also, JT Thor is around as well. So you have, let's see here, 13, including Thompson. 14 would be Isaac Okoro. So we'll have to see. HJ also says, don't the Cavs have a lot of cap next season since Strus, Niang, and LeVert are expiring? Wait, not Strus. Yeah, so LeVert is entering the final season of his contract. That is why I believe that Jalen Tyson will probably end up making him expendable, because he is, expiring still holds some value. He's making $16.6 million this season. Strus still he's under contract until 2027, 28. Niang is going to be entering the final year of his contract next season, not this year, not this upcoming year. The 2025-26 season, Niang is due to make about $8.2 million, and then he'll hit unrestricted free agency in the summer of 2026-27. So, they might, but they're going to have to be doing some finagling next season as well. But at the end of the day, this is kind of the area where the Cavaliers are always going to be heading towards, as we're talking about making ourselves into a contending level team. And I think that we're going to get there under Kenny Atkinson, but patience is still needed. Patience is still necessary. But getting Thompson back into the fold, who I still believe has a lot to offer a team in terms of veteran presence and being a locker room guy and still being able to contribute somewhat on the court, as you can see here. I do believe that there's value in bringing him back, especially when you're looking at the other options, like some of the guys that I mentioned earlier. When you're literally when you're down to the JaVale McGee's, and this is no disrespect to any of these guys because I still like JaVale McGee. I still would have accepted JaVale McGee had he been brought in. But the point is, when you're talking about bringing in, when you're talking about choosing rather between JaVale McGee, Tristan Thompson, Boban, among others, it's not a battle that is really worth fighting. And that is perfectly understandable in my opinion. So I understand why they would have chosen to go this route because you're presumably bringing Tristan back on a very cheap deal, very manageable contract, and I think that's what Kobe's aim was this season. And I mean, look at this. He could still run, still rim run, still defend the low post at a I guess a semi-valuable level. He can still get out there and defend when you need him to out in space, but it's not something you're going to be relying on him to do all that often. And obviously, the biggest calling card of Thompson's game throughout his 13 years in the NBA has been his ability to go up and grab offensive rebounds, which he can still clearly do. Look at him right here. Beast Girl says, "What's going on, man?" So he decided to come back home. I think so. And I mean, I've been paying attention to his social media accounts since the start of free agency. And I always kind of figured that he was probably not coming back, but maybe no other team really was offering him anything, or he just wasn't getting an offer that he liked. And you see the fact that Cleveland still has a pretty clear need at backup center because there's not really any other reliable option on the roster. And this always made the most sense. And he's familiar with the city. He won a title here and he's still pretty loved. So this makes all the sense in the world for him to have come back. And despite the waning production over the years, I still, as you said down here as well, hope that he can retire as a member of the Cleveland Cavaliers. I hope that's the case too. I do believe that this has got to be this has got to be TT's final year. I do not believe he will be back for the 2025-26 season. It's got to be the final year of his career because I just don't see it happening past that. Peace Girls also says, or wait for LeBron to come back. LeBron's probably not coming back. Maybe on a one-day contract. I gave that up. I gave that idea up a long time ago. I never saw it happening after the drafting of Bronny James. I just don't think that is going to happen anymore. But it is nice to have Tristan back, and I will always be a huge fan of the play out here that he provides. And I do wonder how much of what we saw earlier on in the season, as you're seeing in these clips, I do have to wonder how much of that was from the PEDs, but I still think that you can't teach offensive rebounding. Well, I suppose you can teach positioning, but you can't teach motor. You can't teach drive. You can't teach the willingness. People have to want to go out there and do that. And Tristan Thompson has always struck me as a player who strives to go out there and eat up on the glass. And I love it. I mean, you're seeing so much of these putbacks here, even in year 13 for him. And it's just been such a fun ride, even though he did not spend his entire career with the Cavaliers. He spent the bulk of it, but not all of it. But it's pretty damn cool to bring him back. And I do wonder how you guys feel about this. So feel free, if you're watching this a little bit later on, or if you're in the chat right now, let me know how you feel about this signing. I feel like they could have done much worse, but at this point in time, I mean, I would have just taken just about anybody just to fill out the roster, and can't get any worse with some of the options out here. Tristan Thompson is likely to be glued to the bench early on, but we will see. Time will tell. But as I always tell you guys, if you like to reach out to me, you know how you can. It's Cavalier_pod on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and more. If you want to be added to the It's Cavalier Discord chat, you know what to do. Leave a rating, leave a review, send a screenshot of said review to itscavalier53@gmail.com, and I'll send you an invite. If you want to support the podcast in a small but helpful way, consider becoming a member over on Patreon. The link is in the description of this video. You never know how much you help out some of your favorite content creators by doing that. And hopefully Hopefully, the next time that I get on here for another one of these live podcasts, it's to talk about a Isaac Okoro multi-year extension or some type of resolution for this fucking situation. Because I don't know about you guys, but I'm just so sick and tired of seeing restricted free agents for Cleveland or basically just free agents for this team have long holdouts or contract negotiations. We saw that with Tristan Thompson way earlier on, almost 10 years ago. We saw it with J.R. Smith. We're seeing it with Isaac Okoro. We saw it with Colin Sexton before he was moved in the deal that brought in Donovan Mitchell. I don't know about you guys, but I'm just so tired of seeing these contract negotiations play out until late September or, up to the deadline or just not go anywhere at all. So hopefully the next time I get on here, we're talking about some type of resolution for Isaac Okoro. That said, go Cavs. Have a good day.